Well, hello and welcome to Frame.io Live. My name is Ryan. I'm an enterprise customer success manager here at Frame.io based in New York City. And today I am going to be taking you through your ultimate Frame.io admin guide. Really thrilled that you're joining me today for a really great agenda. We're going to chat all about the admin roles and responsibilities. We're also going to spend some time just talking about the account hierarchy, also user roles and types. I'll also walk through a couple examples of ways that I've seen these users be applied to the account in the past. We'll also hop into my own Frame.io account and we'll chat through all of the different settings that the admins have the ability to control. But with that said, I would like to make sure that today is a beneficial session for you. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the comment section as we go along today. I did already see a comment from Brian. Brian, welcome. You're also welcome to use that comment section if you just want to let me know where you're tuning in from. One of my favorite things about leading this session every week is that there's folks who are joining from all over the world. And if you're watching this as pre-recorded content, fear not, I will also drop some comments in that chat bubble as we go along today just to reinforce some of the things that we're chatting about. Hopping right on in, let's just start with what an admin is. So an admin has a little bit more global control over your account. Admins typically will create and manage workspaces. They can also add, remove, and manage various users. Also manage global account settings that no other users on the account can. And typically our admins will work with folks like myself, make sure that you're getting the most out of your enterprise account. But let's talk a little bit now about some of the hierarchy that exists. Using some vernacular that we use here at Frame, teams are actually the highest level of organization on your account. These are the varying workspaces where you'll see your projects and your content listed. So if you are an enterprise customer, you could create as many teams as you would like. The benefit to that being that there's elements of visibility and permissions that you could actually consider when you set up teams and who actually gets invited into those teams. So you can see in this particular example that the names of the teams that we have are Green Knight and Marcel the Shell. Various users are also invited to view content on a per team basis. So users can actually be invited into specific teams. So if you only have somebody working on Green Knight in this example, you can also invite them into that team exclusively. And then teams have visibility and permissions that are set by the admin to determine the level of privacy that you prefer. You can even hide teams. We'll chat a little bit about that here in a moment. And then within each team, you'll have a project. So you can see here that within that Green Knight team that we created, we have several projects that exist, including 30-second teaser, full trailer, and archived, and projects will always exist within a team. And once a user is added into a team, they have access to all projects. But individual projects can also be made private. You can see here that there's a lock icon next to one of the projects here called archived. It's also important to note that content is archived at the project level. So that could also better inform how you choose to organize your content as well. And then files and folders, of course, is what makes up your account storage. All of that will live directly within the project itself. You could also create different complex folder structures. So you can put in various file types. You can put in PDFs, video files, audio files, even Microsoft Word files as well. Most commonly, I work with brands, agencies, and folks that work in the media and entertainment space. So I do want to use those three examples just to walk through some of the ways that I've seen teams and projects organized in the past. We'll also use these same examples to go through the various user roles and types as well. If you're a brand, typically I've seen teams organized based on a seasonal campaign or maybe even various business units like marketing, internal, or production. You could even make teams different mediums like broadcast or social, maybe even based on regional location. For brands, typically I see projects based on independent video projects. Maybe even the stage of development could be a helpful way to break out your project structure. And then files and folders, typically I see organized based on approval stage, maybe even pre-production material like proposal decks, lookbooks, really a way for you to be able to stay organized based on however you choose to do that now. If you're an agency, typically I see teams are actually created based on each individual client. Remember, if you are an enterprise customer, you could create as many teams as you would like. So it certainly could help to make sure that each team is then specified based on either those clients or groupings of clients that you're working on. And then projects, typically anything that is pertinent to that specific client, maybe even the region or location where a client is based. And then files and folders, typically assets, deliverables, maybe even various forms of edits. And then for media and entertainment, typically I see teams set as either specific film or television projects, maybe even a specific series. Projects, then one step a little bit deeper in there with organization based on the seasons of a serialized program, maybe even distinct business segments, and files and folders really could be structured based on whatever your custom editorial and review process looks like. I do want to chat a little bit about actually the user roles that exist. There's a couple of different roles, starting with the admins. That's most of you here on the call today. Admins have the ability to make global changes. They can create and manage teams, also add in new workspaces. Also, they can invite in team members. They can also log out specific users if they don't want users to be a part of that space anymore. Directly beneath admins that are team managers, they have some but not all admin permissions. So they can adjust settings for specific teams and add in new team members into those spaces. If I were to guess, a majority of your users will be team members who are added on a per team basis. And these users have the ability to create and manage projects. They could upload, modify, and delete files. They could even add in collaborators and also share out externally. So they could create and generate those links. Collaborators, a little bit different than team members. They're actually added on a per project basis. So remember earlier, I said when you create a team and you add somebody in, they can see all projects. That's only team members. Collaborators will only see the individual project. They can upload and comment, but they do not have the ability to share out externally. I'd also like to highlight that collaborators and up, so collaborators, team members, managers, and admins all take up a seat within your account because they have access to all of the components of the account. The reviewer role, however, does not take up a seat or a license. The reviewer is anybody who receives a review link. They can leave comments, they can even download content, but they won't actually have access to your account itself. Please let me know if you have any questions about these specific user roles and types. I do want to use those same examples of brand, agency, and media and entertainment just to walk through a couple of different roles and users that I've seen that have fit within the different licensing roles now. So admins, typically for brands, I'll see be a department head, an IT admin, somebody who actually needs to welcome those people in and create the workspace. Team managers being a right-hand person to those admins, maybe a head producer or a team lead. Team members, typically producers, staff editors, creators, a bulk of the amount of your users. Collaborators, typically I see be freelancers, maybe even DITs. Remember, they can't share out externally. And then reviewers being any stakeholders or external partners, people who just need to see that final result. For agencies, admins typically are the same type of role. Team managers could even be a primary client liaison, a little bit different here in that you might have a little bit more client engagement. You could also invite in clients as collaborators. Remember, they only have access to the project. And then team members, typically for agencies, any client-facing personnel, editorial staff, producers, and then reviewers, typically the client, maybe even the talent. And then for media and entertainment, typically I see the admins being executive producer, maybe a company owner, team managers being a series producer, team members, producers, primary editors, the bulk of the users again. Collaborators being any assistants, maybe members of the production crew, and then lastly, those reviewers, a director, the talent, maybe even the distributor. I wanted to stop here and see if there's any questions about user roles or teams or projects. Please let me know. While I'm waiting for any questions to come through, I am going to bump over into my Frame.io instance. You can access your Frame.io account by going to app.frame.io. We are web-based. We also have an iOS app and an iPad app too. I would like to highlight that I am within our current version of the product for our enterprise customers. What you're looking at here, brief demo, here on the left-hand side, we call this our account switcher, meaning that these are the various accounts that you could be a part of. So you could use the same email address, but could potentially be a part of a different workspace. So you could easily go back and forth between teams if needed. Here you'll see this team and project structure that I mentioned earlier. So you could see here that within my team, Frame.io Live Series, I have my drip ad project, and then any files and folders will exist within that project space. There's a search bar up here where you could search for various assets on the account, and there's also a secure inbox for any of our enterprise customers. These folks then can easily view any review links that have been sent to them. A wonderful enterprise feature that exists. Up here, you do have the ability to manage or edit any review links or presentation links that have been sent out. You could also connect any C2C or camera to cloud connections listed up here at the top. Moving over to the right-hand side there, you do have the ability to share out then, create a new folder, a new asset upload. Up here, you'll also see a list of names of users. This is where you add in collaborators. which remember only have access at the project level. By clicking on that option, you then can invite them in via email. Remember, collaborators do take up a seat within your account. But let's take a peek at some of the settings in the back now. This is an admin-based session, so let's talk about the components that only the admin has access to. Here on the left-hand side under this account section, if you're an admin, you'll see this. If you're not, then you will not see this. Let's go ahead and start with users and teams. Remember, you could create as many teams as you would like. If you're an enterprise customer, we call this multi-team management. The benefit there being that you'll have various workspaces that will just keep your work a little bit separate. So I just posted an article that outlines multi-team management specifically. But here under this users and teams tab is then where I can go up here and create new team. You can see I already have a couple of teams that exist. I then am going to ask, what do we want to name this team? Let's go ahead and name this one summer campaign. And we have the ability to adjust some of the privacy here. Every single team member will see a team directory. So they'll be able to see a list of all the teams that exist. They can even request access to those spaces if it's visible. If it's private, then each individual will have to be specifically invited into that space. They will not even be able to see it. If you're working on a more black box project, that could be a wise option. Under access, if it's open, folks can see it. They can add in members. Team members can invite in collaborators. If you don't want users to be able to do that, you can make it restricted, meaning that only admins and team managers, those higher global account setting roles, can accept those users. You can add in some allocation limits. These are soft limits. So if I go to enable here, I can select how many users I want to be a part of this space. So let's say that we want to allocate 10 users and 250 gigs to this specific location. This is where I'm able to add that in. Once I hit those limits, then a banner would appear at the top of your screen, where then you can make adjustments to that team if needed, just a way for you to be able to stay within the parameters of your seat limits. You also can apply an internal watermark. This would apply to any assets that are uploaded to that specific team. This is not as popular as the watermark that you would utilize at the time of external sharing, but again, it really just depends on the type of privacy that you need and prefer. Once I click Save Privacy Settings, it's then going to go ahead and create that summer campaign team as listed here. I can then get a snapshot from this screen of how many projects, members, storage, and the privacy level is associated with that team. I do want to drop in the chat now another article specifically around internal allocation. Now that we have a team that's created, let's go ahead and invite in a couple of users. So I could go up here to the top left where it says team members, and I'm going to get a list of all of the users that are actually already a part of my workspace. However, let's go ahead and invite in some new people that might not be a part of a team yet. So I'm going to go over here to the top right corner where it says invite users. I could select the team or teams. I could select multiple spaces here if desired. Click next, and then I have the option to input the email addresses here. So let's go ahead and do Jane Doe. And John Smith. I could continue to add in additional users just by clicking add a line, and then that would send an invite to those users. Down here under role, I could select regular member, which will default to, or I could add them as an admin. You could create as many admins as you would like, but everything that we're discussing today, I hope will give you a good idea of what you actually want some of the users on the account to be able to do. Let's leave these folks as regular members and go ahead and invite them in. They're then going to receive an email address to either sign in or create a sign in if they don't have one already. Underneath my teams, then under this team summer campaign that we created, I can see that these users are now pending. They've received invites. If I wanted to make them team managers, I could enable team management, meaning that then they will be that new user role. I do want to highlight that only team members will show up on this page. But if you go up here to manage users and select collaborators, you then will see a list of all of the collaborators, no matter what project they're associated with. You're also then able to see their last view date, and you could potentially remove these users if needed to be able to stay within the stipulations of the licenses. Do you want to drop in the chat an article around adding team members? Let's hop into a couple of these account settings now. So I'm just going up here to this new tab under account settings. If you have any questions around adding in users or managing teams, feel free to drop them in the chat now. Underneath download permissions, I do have the ability to select which users I do want to allow to download content. I could have it be team members and up, collaborators and up. I could even limit it to be no one. So this would not allow those users on that asset itself to be able to download any content that exists within my account. There is an option for invites. Right now, team members can invite in collaborators. If you did not want that to be the case, then you could limit that ability so only admins would be able to invite in collaborators. That is what this setting specifically allows you to do. Secure sharing is an enterprise-only feature. It will require that the user that you sent a review link to sign into a Frame.io account. The reason behind that is because it will just require that that user, the one who is receiving the link, is the only one who could actually open up that link. So just an additional layer of security associated with a review link that's sent out. You can make it default for users to send out secure shared links only, or you also could enable users to send out a public link that will not require a sign-in. You also can determine which users can share out public links. So if you wanted to make the default invite only or that secure shared link, but you wanted to enable team managers to be able to send out links that are not secure shared, you have the ability to do that too. C2C connections, again, that stands for that camera to cloud connections. This setting would enable you to decide which users you want to be able to manage any content associated with C2C. Really could be wise if you have a DIT or maybe some additional members of the crew that are going to be a part of a project workspace. Make sure that they have access to be able to manage that hardware. Watermark ID. You can require watermark ID on any internal assets. That is this setting here. You also can require it on all externally shared assets. You also have the ability to determine which users can make modifications to a watermark at the time of external sharing. But speaking of external sharing, you do have the ability to create a template for a watermark listed right here. You can see here that I have a couple of templates that already exist, but let's create a new one together. I'm going to name this one for the summer campaign 2024. And there is a handful of different text that we can add. Name, email address, IP address of the user, date and time, and then any custom text as well. So you could give this the project name. You can even adjust the size of the text, the color, the opacity. You can have it scroll, or you also could move this content around. Right now, this watermark is just text-based. And lastly, the setting that you'll see here is the Apple TV app. This is available only for our enterprise customers because it does require a secure shared link in order to access it. But content could be viewed on an Apple TV app by any users who sign in. This could be especially helpful if you have some reviewers who work in a boardroom or have the ability to view that in an office or a different space. You can apply a 4-digit passcode just to add an extra layer of security, which is what this setting pertains to. Perfect. A couple other settings I want to draw your attention to. One is groups. Only admins have the ability to create a group. This would be helpful if you are sharing links to the same stakeholders every time. So let's say there's a group of 10 individuals that you need to send a link to. You give it a name. Let's call this one group for review. We could then add in these users' email addresses. So let's add in Jane Smith, John Doe. We could even add a little emoji next to it if desired. And this means that now, anytime I go to share out an asset, as opposed to having to put in those users' email addresses every time, I could simply just type in the name of that group and it will send that review link to that group of users. So let's say that I wanted to share out this asset specifically. We're going to go to share, share for review. You can see here that then I have the option to input an email address for this user. But instead, we're just going to type in the name of that group, and then it will automatically send it to all email addresses associated with that group. I'm going to go back here into the account settings. Branding will enable you to determine branded email notifications at the team level. You can see here that we have some Frame.io colors associated with our custom branding now, but you have the ability to change this. Let's say you're working with a specific client and you want to make sure that the colors and the theme matches that of the client. You can add that here. Same thing goes for presentation pages. Presentations are a little bit different than review links in that they're just static. It's just the asset itself. So you could add in some additional accent colors, text colors, just to add a little bit more professionalism and customization to any links that you're sending to reviewers. This billing tab here will also give you an overview, a snapshot of how many team members, collaborators, storage, and projects are associated with your account. If you just wanted an overview, this is a great place to go. Every user will have access to these personal settings here, including the team directory, which is what I was mentioning earlier. This will give a overview, a snapshot of every single team that exists, and users can request to join unless it is restricted. Email and password will enable your team to change their login details. There's also some Google authentication. We can also apply two-factor authentication or SSO for our enterprise customers. This profile tab will enable your team to put in a photo and their name, which would be associated with any comments that they leave. Every user can adjust their specific notifications. So you could change your digest of how frequently you receive emails. And if you're subscribed to various projects, you can also turn off notifications in those specific spaces. We have a handful of native integrations. We, of course, have our app for iPhone and iPad. Natively, you can also integrate Vimeo and Slack with Frame.io. You can publish content directly to Vimeo, and you can receive Slack notifications for occurrences or actions within the account, such as a user adding new content or sharing externally. Our more popular application integrations are Final Cut, Premiere Pro, and After Effects. Those are a little bit more native, which would enable you to have a Frame.io panel directly within those NLEs, making it significantly easier to both work, edit, and republish content. Highly recommend you to check these out if you haven't done so already. Any apps that are connected with Frame will also show up here. You can see here that I have Filmic Pro as part of a camera cloud content that's associated. There's also some dev tokens down here if you are so inclined. I know that I've mentioned a handful of enterprise-specific features. I did want to share out an article that just outlines some of our enterprise features in case you're interested. Specifically, there is a lot there around security. There's also some additional features that enable you to scale a little bit more effectively, such as multi-team management and secure inbox. But that about wraps up our time here for the Ultimate Frame.io Admin Guide. I just gave you a crash course of all the things that you need to know as an admin. However, support does not stop here. Up here in the top right corner, we have a little question mark. By clicking here, there'll be a chat bubble that will appear at the bottom of your screen. That will give you direct access to our support team. These folks up here are actually live individuals that are chatting now. They're there to help answer any questions and point you in the right direction if you get stuck directly within the app. But on behalf of our entire team, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that this was a helpful session, whether you're watching this with me live or pre-recorded. Thank you again. I didn't see any questions come through, but don't hesitate to give our support team a shout if you have any. Thank you again for joining me today. Wherever you're tuning in from, I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you. Bye now.